So today's panelists are going to be Elizabeth Spencer. She's the FRC Director. We also have Anna De Silva. She is the FEC Grant Director. And we have Ereida Galda. She is the Family Support and Education Specialist. All these wonderful ladies have a child with special needs, and I hope you enjoy our presentation.
Sorry, it may help if we just give folks a few more seconds. I see that only half of the participants have responded. So if you want to wait just a few more seconds, we're getting some more responses. I'll let you know when we have most of them.
Okay.
All right, that looks like most of everybody, so we can go ahead and get going.
Liz.
Hi, I forgot I was muted. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us. My name is Ereida Galda, and I work at the Westside Family Resource and Empowerment Center. That's the WFREC. That was on one of the poll questions. And I'm also a proud parent of 3 young adults. John Galda is the young man that the reason I work here and the reason this is my passion. He is a client of the regional center, and many moons ago was a client of Early Start as well. So I can relate to some of the things we'll be talking about today. I hope some of the things we share with you today will help you out. And welcome. So I'm gonna start off our presentation. Thank you for joining us. So the Westside Family Resource Center opened its doors in 1990 and expanded into a Family Empowerment Center in 2000. That FEC grant allowed us to serve children who did not qualify for regional center services, but would still be eligible for special education services. So an example would be those of you that have children that might be transitioning and graduating out of Early Start, but still need some support with special education, and the families want continued support from an agency. We don't want you to feel alone. That's what we're here for. That's what this grant is there for. It's to provide you that ongoing support as your kid continues to receive these services. We also, some of the other examples of families we serve are those kids who maybe have just like a specific learning disability, like ADHD or dyslexia. Maybe they have health issues only and need some simple accommodations or modifications. Our center is there to provide that support for those families in regards to helping them identify what resources or supports the school can provide for them with education for the families. We are dedicated to building a strong community that provides information, resources, and support to parents, families, professionals, and members of the community, leading them to create successful partnerships that enhance the lives of infants, children, youth, and adults with special needs. So with that said, the majority of our staff is either a parent of someone with a diagnosis or a special need, or a family member. We have a sibling who works with us right now. And so it's a very unique ability to be able to support people when you've traveled or can relate to a lot of the things they're going through, or when they're going to travel, some of the things you've already traveled. So our goal is to hopefully help you navigate systems of care in an easier manner and let you know you're not alone, that there's a community out there to support you in whatever it is you need. We can go to the next slide. So COVID-19, we cannot ignore that word right now. It's obviously changed everyone's lives and a lot of the way we do things. So we wanted to note that we planned this training prior to COVID-19. Therefore, we will address minimal questions and some of the changes, but it's not going to be the focus of this presentation. We wanted to talk about what it means for you and your child in terms of transition. And, you know, COVID-19 continuously changes. There's a lot of uncertainty with it. And so right now, things have changed, but one thing that remains constant is that as your kid transition, each district is probably doing very different things in terms of how they're supporting the transition process. And during that transition process, what hasn't changed is the way they're supposed to do transition. So your rights and responsibilities have not changed. The procedural safeguards have not changed. The delivery of services might look different for a while. The way your kid is supported might look different. Even the transition process, like I said, might look different. But at the end, the services your child needs, the assessment, all of that should remain pretty much the same. And so as we move forward with transition with your child, if you feel you're having concerns, if you feel you're not being supported, if there's questions, that's where agency is there for. We're here to support you. We're trying our best to get the newest information available as it comes along and informing our parents. So yeah, basically we're learning with you and we're here to support you. You guys want to add anything, Liz, Anna? All right. You're on mute.
Hi, I think that, Ereida, I think you covered it very well.
Oh, thank you. Well, this is your slide.
Okay.
And this is our director, Elizabeth Spencer, and I'll let her introduce herself to you guys. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. As you can tell, none of us are professionals at this, and I really honor the fact that you're letting us learn with you technologically and navigating through COVID. This part of the presentation is really geared toward preparing you to prepare. And I want you to understand that while it's very important for you to know and navigate through the different systems of care via the regulations and the laws that are provided for you, it's also, I believe, much more important for you to remember just the basics. And I think oftentimes as parents, we feel like we have to know everything about everything. We have to know and understand everything about the diagnosis. We have to know everything about the systems. We have to know about the regulations. What we oftentimes forget is the most important knowledge that we have is about our child. You bring the most amount of information to any table that you sit at, any conversation that you have. Nobody there knows more about your child than you. And oftentimes we forget how important that is. So I want to begin my part of this presentation by sharing with you this wonderful graphic, which is a child's life is like a piece of paper on which every person leaves a mark. So what does that mean to me? What that means to me as the mother of a 31-year-old extraordinary man with Down syndrome is that every person who has come in contact with him, who has interacted with him, who has shared a day with him, or shared a meal, or a lesson, or a session, or an interaction, has left their mark on him. And as I look back over the last 31 years, I would say that the majority of those interactions were positive and added to who he is. And I also believe the same for my 20-year-old son, who doesn't have special needs. Everybody who comes in contact with him lays a piece of themselves down, interacts with them that eventually build who these young men are. And I would like to share some of my experience and what has helped me. When I look back through 2020 eyes, in hindsight, I wish I had done some things differently. I focused too much time on things I thought I need to know. And it kind of took away from some of the experiences I could have had. That being said, I do want all of you who are participating in this training to know that we understand the challenges that are out there because of COVID-19, because of transition. We understand that, and we will never be disrespectful or mocking of that, because as challenged as you feel right now, I guarantee you that all of us have walked that same path. All of us have felt scared. All of us have felt worried. All of us have felt ill-prepared. And so walk with us right now, and we're going to start with our next slide. So preparing yourself, and yes, that means you and your child for change. So what I'm going to say to you is that it is well documented, and we all know it, that parents struggle much more with transition than their children do. When our children are ready to move from being taken care of family or us into a daycare situation, when they're changing doctors, if they're having a play date with friends and that changes, we tend to throw ourselves into assuming the worst. Oh my gosh, they're never going to get over this. This is going to be so hard. It's going to be scary. How will they survive? When at the very bottom of it, it's how will we survive? We're so scared. We're worried this is not going to work. What I want you to know is that children, especially at this age, are so incredibly resilient. And our job as parents is to build that resilience. So you just do a lot of talking and a lot of interacting and a lot of showing them that we're going to change. We're not going to see Susie, who's the speech therapist. We're going to have a new one. Oh, you're going to learn so much from her. It's going to be wonderful. We're going to go into a new school. It's going to be so exciting. Children are going to learn through you as their primary teacher. And you are their best teacher. And they're going to not only hear what you say to them, but they're going to feel your energy. And I guarantee you, they're going to pick up on your cues. And so I want you to remember that. I want you also to remember that you have already come through life's biggest transition, and that was having this child. Birth is life's biggest transition, and you made it through, and you made it through successfully. And everything that comes after that is going to be okay. And so I want you now to understand that you're a pro at this, okay? We talked a little earlier about talking to your child about starting preschool, however that feels comfortable for you. Oh my gosh, this is so exciting. Look at all of these toys that are in this classroom. Oh, we're going to meet new friends. It's going to be great. You would do that with any child. Doing that with a child who has special learning needs is even more important. And they're absolutely going to take your cues and energy. And so be as positive and energetic, and you don't have to fake it because it is a positive change. They're going to be a big boy, just like their brother, or a big girl, just like their sister and brother. And they're going to have all kinds of new opportunities and experiences. When you're in this process of choosing preschools and thinking about what that's going to look like, particularly now during COVID, it's not going to be as easy to access programs as maybe you had hoped. And so I'm going to really encourage you to engage your community. Where do your neighbors' kids go to school? Do you go to a church or synagogue? And are any of those families comfortable with talking about where their children go to preschool and sharing experiences? There are many preschools that actually have virtual tours now. And so you can just get on, when you're not able to sleep at night, get on the old computer and navigate a couple of schools. Even if they're not in your area or neighborhood, but you want to see what are some of the things to look for and get an idea for what others in your circle are doing. I'm going to encourage you also to look for schools that are as close to home as they can be. You really want to start building that community. You want, when your children are going to school, you want them to be able to have friend dates, and you want to be able to go to birthday parties and other celebrations. Have them be as close to your school or as close to your home as possible. Next slide. I want to talk to you a little bit about positive parent-professional communication. And when we talk about communication, we think about it in terms of talking. Obviously now you can tell how old I am because I think of it in terms of talking. Other people obviously think of it in terms of email and texting and direct messaging. I'm still the talker. But communication is much, much more than just talking. Communication helps to shape relationships that are going to benefit your child. Positive communication can build trust between you and that school community. So what do I mean by that? So when we look at communication in terms of building relationships and building trust, we're talking about, for some of us, the relationship with the school environment, even from the larger, meaning the special education department, where the services and supports come from, down to the local school, the school your child will attend. For some of us, this can be a 17-year relationship. You are entering into a relationship with somebody that you want to work positively with for as long as you possibly can. So what are some things that you can do when you're entering that relationship? You can show up on time. And I use this example on the screen because my nephew, many years ago, when I was talking about how challenged I am to be on time, and people who know me know I struggle with that. And he said to me, Auntie Liz, if you are early, you're on time. If you're on time, you're late. And if you're late, you're disrespectful. And it really, I stopped what I was doing because I thought, oh my gosh, I always internalized it to be about me. I'm running late, I'm taking care of kids, I've got these other things going on, I'm dealing with traffic. I didn't think that others would take it as an issue of disrespect. But I want you to consider that you are advocating typically for one child. The people who are sitting at the table with you and who are sharing meetings with you have 30 children in a class or 15 children in a class. or they're overseeing hundreds of children. Or if it's at a higher level, they might be administrating for 60,000 children in a district the size of Los Angeles Unified. So understand that while they want to give you their time and energy, yours is not the only child. So when you show up on time, you're telling them you respect their time and their day is just as important as your day is. Also want you to be prepared. If they have asked that you come with forms signed or be willing to sign forms or have information to share, or you've called a meeting, you want to show up prepared. Again, you're showing them that you respect them, you respect their role in your child's life, and you respect your child. Be respectful towards others. I don't say that easily because I can tell you, whether it's my Irish roots or the fact that I was a little older when I had my kids, I am a fierce advocate and fighter for my kids, but I'm also very emotional. And sometimes that emotion stood in the way of me demonstrating respect for the people sitting at the table. We're gonna, throughout this training, I want you all to know that you're gonna hear the same message a few different times in a few different ways. And so we're going to give you later in the training some ideas for how you can support yourself. If you know that you might get emotional at an IEP meeting or at any meeting, take somebody with you who can be the ears and who can put a hand on your knee to kind of calm you down. After all, you're talking about your baby. And what I used to tell folks all the time was, no matter how old my son was, sometimes during meetings, people would say things and it would take me back to the day he was born, or take me back to the day I handed him to the doctor for open heart surgery. It would take me back to those times when the emotions were so raw and the emotions were so huge and they were so driven by love that it kept me from being as calm as I wanted to be. That's understandable. You're talking about your child and you're advocating for your child, but to the best ability that you can, be respectful towards others and follow through. Oh my gosh, I cannot tell you how important that is. When you leave a meeting or you're getting ready for a meeting or you have something to do, or even if it's you've committed to help with homework and you've given your word, to the best of your ability, follow through. If you say that you're gonna provide pipe cleaners for a science project, do it. If you're gonna have brownies for something, do it. Get really comfortable with having a plan B. And that plan B is, if at the last minute I figure I can't, I'm gonna call my friend or my mom or my husband or my partner or my colleague. Somebody's gonna jump in there and do it because I gave my word. All of this helps with building trust in a school community who's going to serve your child. And there are going to be things that we're going to revisit and we're going to come back to, both in this training as well as the next in the series of 4 that are going to help you prepare for transition. So if you figure by the second training you've heard all this before, you have, and you'll hear it again. But you kind of can't hear it too often, because even being the parent of a 31-year-old, I still have to remind myself. Next slide. All right, I'm going to turn this over to Anna De Silva. Anna is the director of our Family Empowerment Center grant, and she's a valued member at the Family Resource Center. And so with that, I'll turn it over to you, Anna.
Actually,
I will be coming in on the next slide. Thank you, Liz. And this will be Ereida's slide.
I am so sorry. As I said at the beginning, thank you for allowing us to do this. We are not professionals.
it's okay. And thank you, Liz. That was a you speak so well. It's always so hard to speak after you. So I'm gonna try to do justice by you. Introducing your child to the team. So as Liz mentioned earlier, you are probably one of the most important people in your child's life and in that team, because you know your child the best. You're with your child 24 hours. You know them when they're feeling good, when they're feeling sick. You know them in different environments, what makes them, happy, what makes them mad, what triggers them, what, they're strong about, and what their weaknesses are. And so when you're introducing your child to the team, keep that in mind, because what you have to say is extremely important. A lot of these people are getting to know your child because they met him for a couple of hours or her, or because they're reading documents that are painting a picture of your child. So this is your opportunity to really get to let them know who your child is, and not losing sight of the fact that we're all here for that child, and that's the most important person, the child, and we're all there as a team for the child. So we have a couple of bullets. The first one's a vision statement, and it talks about goals and visions. And so when we talk about goals and visions, I remember back when my son was little, my goal was for Johnny to walk. And I didn't have a lot of experience. I was young. I didn't even know FRCs existed, so I didn't know a lot. I just knew I wanted to see Johnny walk, and that was my goal. And through some behavior challenges that Johnny had, we realized that that was not Johnny's goal. Johnny's goal was to communicate. And as naive as it sounds now, I didn't know, well, how is he going to communicate? John's nonverbal. And it's embarrassing to say that now, but I was so ignorant that there was so many other ways people could communicate. He was very young. He was probably 2, and so going too early start. And so anyways, we changed the goal to communication, and you know what? We still worked on walking, and communication became the goal, and all the rest of the little issues that we had, John's behaviors, they seemed to settle down. So as I'm sharing that story with you, it's to remind you that sometimes we have to consider what our childs want to in their life. And even though they're little, they have a voice. And even if they're nonverbal, they have a voice. So keep that in mind, because typically what we think goals are the related services, which is occupational therapy, maybe speech, maybe physical therapy. And yes, that should be part of the goals if that's going to enhance your child's life, if that's what they need. But more than that, I think when you talk about goals and vision, it should be, things like wanting a community for your child, wanting your child to have friends, to have social skills, to be able to play in the playground with other children, to have a school that embraces your child, to have a school that includes your child, to have them be part of a bigger community. So as you put together this goal and this vision, keep all of that in mind, that it's not just those services that our kid gets, that specific thing we're working on, but it's how everything kind of falls into place around your child. So describing your child, talking about the strengths, what scares him, what makes them happy, what are your concerns? I mean, what are your child's strengths? We want to let these people know, things that they might not have witnessed when they were meeting your child or doing an assessment. Maybe your child is very friendly. Maybe your child is very motivated to do things, and they're very, they're hard workers. Maybe your child, has very good vocabulary. But maybe, your concern is that even though there's really good vocabulary, the receptive and expressive skills are not there. There's not much he's saying. He can talk good, he can say words, but he's not really telling you things that, are really communicating stuff. What scares him? maybe there's things that could scare your kid, like loud noises that people aren't aware of, or certain voices scare some kids. I know my son startles whenever there's a loud noise. And there's some kids that have sensory that might also, be affected with certain things that, other people might not know about. So this is your chance to be able to communicate that with the people that are in your team, that are in your child's team. What makes them happy? Maybe they like to watch certain things, or they like to paint. They like to play with water. They like to, run. And at the same time, that's a concern because they might be elopers. So maybe that's a concern that you want to be aware that you share with the class or with whoever you're meeting with. And that kind of falls under what your child likes or does not like. But I'd even be more specific in terms of maybe colors. There's certain colors your kid cannot, if they're too bright for them, they can't, they don't like it. The feeling of certain textures aren't something your kid does not like. Maybe your kid does not like certain animals. Liz had a really great example, and maybe I'll have her share it with her son not liking bunnies. Do you want to share that example, Liz?
Sure.
Because I think it's great.
So are we talking about the one when he ran out of the kindergarten room?
Yeah.
Yes. So when my son was in preschool, he had been scared by a gerbil type of an animal, and we didn't really think that it was that big of a deal. Lo and behold, when we were looking at kindergarten classes, we had gone to a couple of them, and the one that I was the most focused on, that I loved the most, we walked in and everything was great until he saw a rabbit in a cage, and the preschool teacher was talking about how wonderful the bunnies were, and we would take the bunny home over the weekend. And my son turned around and took off and ran so fast and tripped running out of the room and bit right through his lip. And that was his way of saying, yes, no, we're not going to be around little things with fur. So really listen and share that information. You never know what is going to be the most important piece of it.
Thank you, Liz. Thank you for sharing that story. But, that's a really good example that Liz used, because somebody else might not know that. And oftentimes we have show and tell in little schools. And, if you have a kid like Jay's, who you're not going to know the reaction that's going to take place if you were to present them with, a little rabbit to pet or a little animal that's furry. And so keep all that in mind as you're talking to your team, as you're introducing your child. Think of all the things, sit down and take a break and put it on your notes and really, really write it down. Sometimes we get so busy throughout the day that unless we're sitting there and we're looking at stuff like I am today, you really don't think about those things. You just do your natural thing every day. And so what happens is, if other people come into your child's life and they don't know them, you could have alleviated maybe a tantrum or a behavior or sometimes less frustration for your child if there was things they knew about him that maybe you could have shared with the people. My son loves to be engaged. So if you put him in a class where even though he's nonverbal, the rest of the kids are nonverbal and it's really quiet and there's not a lot of participation going on, he's just not going to go for it. He wants to be in a class where people are talking and including him and asking him yes, no questions and just addressing him. And so those are things I always share at every meeting I have with what right now he's in a program, but as he was, when he was younger and going into different classes, that's the first thing I would address. That's the first thing I would look at, to ensure that it was an appropriate setting for my son. All right, picking 3 of your favorite pictures of your child to take to the meeting, maybe 3 different ones of your child doing 3 different activities. It just, when you show someone a picture of your child, it really lets them know who it is. It makes the conversation, the meeting more real. When somebody's just looking at a file or a document, they really, it's just words on paper. But when you attach a picture to it, or when you have your child there to meet the team, It's so different, you know, and we're going to use our kids as examples. But for example, Johnny on paper looks like someone who's severely involved, and he is, but he's also very bright and loves to be included. And you wouldn't know that if you just read his paper, and you wouldn't know that if I just explained what he's like. But if you saw his picture and you met him, you would understand, just with his eyes, with his smile, that he's somebody who really enjoys life and just wants to be in the middle of everything. The next one is letters or brief summary describing your child from important people in his or her life. So that would be anybody, like somebody who, you know, family member, therapist who they've been working with, you know, because everybody has had a different experience working with your child and being able to work with him, viewing it with their own eyes and their own experiences. So they're able to maybe also chime in for these other people who are going to come into their life on how to facilitate that transition, how to facilitate that relationship, that friendship, how to make that easier. You know, Johnny loves to pay attention, especially if you bribe him with a sticker. You know, Johnny will not do well if the TV's on and we're trying to do therapy. Or Johnny, right before he gets hungry, Johnny will, you know, not really want to participate. And so those are all things you want to keep in mind. And, you know, or Johnny's a really happy kid. It's been a pleasure working with him, you know, but you got to push him a little bit because he gets bored really fast. So those are all things that are going to give somebody else the ability to move forward and support your child a little bit easier. Is there anything I'm missing, Liz or Anna, that you guys want to add?
So what I would include, this is Liz, what I would include, and I think those are all great items. I want our audience to know to try as best you can to not overthink everything. The very best information that I have provided to folks on my kid has always been the last 10 minutes before a meeting when I've thought, what do I need to say to them? But your vision statement is very important. What do you see your child in 20 years? What do you want for them? I want to share with you all that when I read my very first vision statement for my son, I would say he's 90% of everything I had hoped for him, he has accomplished. I wanted him to have choices, he does. I wanted him to have relationships, a love interest, and he does. I wanted him to have the job of his dreams, and he does. He loves movies, and he works in a movie theater. Everything I had broadly stated in my vision statement is what has happened for him because of him. I also wove into there that we're a family, a very close family with strong beliefs, and one of those beliefs was that we believed that people should not be separated for any reason. We were very focused on inclusion for our child and children and family. And that was important to me. And that has followed him throughout his life. But that was my personal belief as a family. I included that in the vision statement. My vision statement was no more than 3 or 4 paragraphs. Please don't write a book. Please go in there with one sheet of paper. Describe your child with his strengths. I described my son as being a loyal, fierce and loyal friend. At 2.5, he was. At 3, he was. At 31, he is. You know those strengths your child has. Don't be afraid to include them. My son had a great sense of humor. He still does. You can ask anybody who knows him. He will make anybody laugh. He loves humor. Include things like that because you want to describe your child from the place of strength. Then you go into his areas of need. But you want to focus on your child's strength. What makes him happy? How do you calm him? What are his worries? You know better than anybody when you're rocking with that child and looking into his eyes, what connection needs to happen. And you've got that. Share that with that team. When you talk about what your child likes and doesn't like, if they're not a child who's going to be comfortable sitting in circle time, when you're looking at classrooms, you're going to know that. And if that teacher needs 40 minutes of circle time with her preschoolers, that's not a classroom for you. But it doesn't mean that the 1-2 aisles down isn't going to be the class. So knowing and sharing what their favorite things are, what their strengths, and what makes them happy helps to describe what kind of an environment they're going to flourish in. Don't be worried to share that. Ereida touched on the importance of a brief summary. You don't need to walk in with years of reports from therapists. Have every therapist write a paragraph. That's all you need. Put them all on one piece of paper. So I think that's where I'd like to end with this so that we can go on to our next slide. But thank you, Ereida, for all of that.
Thanks.
Such important information.
Thank you. And I think we're moving on to Anna.
Good afternoon. My name is Adhd Silva, and I am the FSC grant coordinator. I support families with IEP information, Iep Clinics. I facilitate the Spanish IEP support group with Ron, and you will meet him later on in the series. I attend IEPs, and now we attend them via Zoom for the kids who do not qualify for regional center services. I also am a parent of 3 amazing young men, and my 25-year-old is the one who brought me into this amazing world of advocacy and alphabet soup, which I call it, where I had to learn a lot of things that I didn't think that I needed to learn, but I did, because my first son was typical, and I had a vision for my kids, that they were all going to go to college, they were all going to, be great in academics, and then all of a sudden you have a child with special needs that you want the same things for, it's just going to look different. So when Ereida was talking about the family vision and Liz was talking about the family vision, our family vision was that Andy would have the same opportunities his brothers would have. It might look different. We would have to make accommodations, but we knew that he definitely was part of our family, included in everything. We wanted to include him in community. His brothers had opportunities to do their religious education and do their as a Catholic family, we had communion and we had things that we wanted him to do. Well, that wasn't available at the time when Andy was little, so Mom had to become a religious ed educator for special education. And that's how we started including Andy in our community. But we knew that we wanted Andy to have the same opportunities as his brothers. And now he's a 25-year-old. He was able to do things that his brothers have done, and he attends community college, and he has his life. He has a very meaningful life in his terms, and we're very thankful for that. Andy was not a part of Early Start. He was diagnosed at almost 4 years old. So my passion was really reaching parents in Early Start and making sure they didn't fall through the cracks. So they would not come in at the same time I came in with a lot of anxiety and stress and having to learn things a lot later. So as we go through this, I'm hoping that what we have to bring you will help you ease a little bit of the stress that parents that come in later have to deal with. And so now I'm going to go into my slide, and Liz and Ereida have already talked about understanding that you truly are the expert on your child. you know your child the best. You're going to be coming in to, even in the intake process, you're going to meet a lot of professionals, and they are going to be amazing at what they do, but they also need to get information from you as a parent. And there are really important things that you need to know as far as the process itself, knowing the rules. When you come in to intake, or whether it's at the school district, whether it's at the regional center, whether it's in other systems of care, such as the doctors, or some people have CCS, any other service that your child might need, you have to go through the process of describing your child, understanding the rules of that system. With transferring to special education, you will be given information on what the process is, and part of it is agreeing to have your child assessed. Understanding those assessments can be very difficult. It's jargon that you have fallen into that might be very difficult to understand. Family resource centers are there to help parents understand some of that information. Knowing the rules, that when you get an invitation to the IEP, they have identified people who will assist, but you can also invite other people. You can also invite therapists that are working with him at home or privately, or people that work with him in preschool or daycare providers. You can also invite family members or friends that know your family, that know or they interact with your child, whether it's at family parties, or whether you have a neighbor that sometimes babysits or has play dates with your child and knows your child's temperament, knows that he would be amazing at doing this, but he would not like doing something else, like Ereida explained, their interests. It's important to include those in the invitation, to let the district know you're coming. Some of those are the rules that you have to let them know who you're inviting. Another rule that might or might not be defined in that initial invitation is that you have the right to record the IEP. You have to let them know. The IEP is an individual education plan. I'm sorry, thank you, Sandy, for reminding me. Again, when professionals or paraprofessionals are speaking and you do not understand the acronyms, it is okay to say, can you let me know what that means? It's okay to be able to stop for a moment and let them describe whatever terminology they're using, whatever acronyms they're using, because this is all new to you. And it's important to know that you have the right to request all that. Another thing that you need to know is that you have the right to request anything that is going to be discussed at that initial meeting ahead of time, 4 to 5 days ahead of time, because it's really unfair to assume that a parent is going to be able to absorb all that new information at the meeting, that sometimes they want to make an hour or two. Sometimes those initial meetings can go 3 to 4 hours, depending on the school district. Sometimes school districts are very thorough and they are willing to sit there and discuss everything. Others just assume the parent is going to, capture it and quickly get through it. And every parent is different and every team is different. So it's very important to know that you have the right to even separate the IEP into 2 parts. You will be getting more of this information as we go through this series. As Sandy had talked about, decided that we wanted to let you know how to prepare from a parent's perspective. So you will get to know more of the structured advocacy and the rules of your safeguards and your procedural safeguards and your and what the law is later on. But it's really important that, you know, from a parent's perspective walking in, that, you know, you need to get to know the people who makes the decisions. As a parent and as people that come with you to support, you also have the right to agree or disagree with what's being discussed. And it's okay to say, you know, I'm really not comfortable making that decision now. I'm going to take your suggestion. I'm going to go home and read it, and I will get back to you on that. Or we can table that. We can table the speech report or the speech decision or your offer, but we can move on to something else, because it's really difficult sometimes, as Liz just, you know, discussed earlier. It's very emotional. It's your child. It's very difficult to make decisions right there and then. I would not want you to do something if you're not comfortable with it. And it is your right not to have to make that decision in that IEP. It's important to gather information and keep records. And we help parents organize that through Iep Clinics, making sure you gather your evaluations ahead of time before any meetings, that we go over them, you highlight information that you felt was correct and captured your child as he really is or she really is, or there's information that, oh, they might have missed and they need to go over or you need to include. And I know we're running out of time, so I'm going to try to get through these a little bit more quickly. Communicate effectively. This doesn't mean that you have to know all the professional jargon that they are using, or that you need to be able to respond in a professional jargon. It's really important that you know that you can prepare ahead of time in your concerns and just ask, you know, why does my child not able to follow instructions? It's okay. You don't have to know the process the speech therapist would be able to describe to you in an assessment. But it's important that you are able to organize your thoughts ahead of time, even if they are not in the professional jargon. We do have amazing resources and workshops that will help you get there, so you can eventually understand the language and the jargon that goes with those reports. If you also emphasize solutions, if you know that what they're suggesting might be great, but there might be a quicker way to go around it, because you already know that it doesn't take, if your child does something that you can address a different way, or behavior, if you know what suits him. It could be really, really simple solutions, and that stuff is what's discussed at the IEPs. You might not agree with everything. Ereida talked about her need for communication. My thing was academic. My goal was, oh, Andy's going to learn to read, or Andy's going to learn this. Well, what the IEP felt is that Andy needed to work more in socialization, and I had to give them a chance to do that, and I'm glad I did, because it really helped a lot in his behavior, and it helped him feel comfortable in the class, and it really eased a lot of the stress of the academics and behavior at the same time. So know that we have to look sometimes on the big picture. We can't hyper-focus on just one skill that we thought he needed to learn. And the IEP will allow you to see a lot of different areas that your child will need support in or not need support in. And it's up to you guys to really come forward with that information and be able to make the best decisions for your child. please don't hesitate to ask questions and have them clarify. Can you repeat that again, or can you explain that again to me? Because I really don't know what that terminology is, or that, or the skills that you're looking at, or that concept is. It's very hard to assume that you will know that from your first few meetings. This is something that is a journey of a lifetime if your child's facing special ed. So be kind to yourself and know that you do not have to know everything in the first meeting. I don't know, next slide. Is there anything else that you guys wanted to add, Liz or Ereida?
I think that this is Liz. I think this is a very important slide, Anna. I think you touched on a lot. Again, I know for our audience, this is a lot of information. But I guess when we talk about focusing on the big picture, a really good friend to our center is a man named Dr. Rich Villa. And Rich Villa says, there is problem admiration and there is problem resolution. Sometimes we get so hooked into problem admiration. I don't like the people, they're not nice to me, they're not nice to my kid, this is not gonna work, the school isn't what I want, yada, yada, yada. Sometimes we get so comfortable with that and so used to that we just do that. We talk about the problem. Let's get used to switching into problem resolution. How do you see this working out? What could make this better? What are your options? How can you help to resolve it? And I think that will take you a long way. Can we also ask if there are any questions from the audience? I've seen one so far, and it was asked, let me see if I can go back here and read it.
It was asking the one thing that you know now you wish you knew when your child was going through transition.
So let me start, and then we'll have Ereida and Anna, and I'll try to be really short because I know that we're over talking this. The one thing I wish I had known was that ultimately he was going to be okay. And I wish that I knew that I didn't have to spend so much time fighting for him, that I could have just experienced him and experienced what people had to offer him. I went ready to fight every step of the way. I wish I had taken some of that time and spent more time reading to him, singing with him, having fun with him. It wasn't all doom and gloom, but I certainly didn't have to have gone to the extent I went to. That's what I wish I had known. Ereida?
What I wish I would have known, I kind of talked about it a little bit earlier, but I wish I would have known my value at the table. I don't know if it was my age that I was younger, a younger parent, but I really didn't speak up much. I agreed with a lot of the stuff they recommended, even though in my gut, I thought, I shouldn't have. And I didn't ask enough questions because I thought that by asking questions or not knowing the terminology they were using, that they'd look at me as someone who was dumb and didn't care about her child because I didn't know what they were talking about. And knowing now, I wish I would have, what I know now, I wish I would have known then that you're learning and it's okay not to know, and it's okay to ask questions and ask again if they say another word you don't understand, and take someone with you, and as a parent, listen to your gut, because even if you aren't that professional, if you don't have all those years of experience, your motherly instinct will not fail you. And so that's what I wish I would have known, that I was that important role, person in that table that knew my child the best.
Mm-hmm. I agree, Ereida, and I think that's the same for me. At the beginning, I think we all start trusting people. I really trusted professionals to, and I do trust them. They do know their they do know their craft, but sometimes services aren't really offered because different administrations or different districts have a specific way of providing support and services, and they have different models of service, and they different models of classes. And I didn't know that I had the right to say, no, my child belongs in, you know, in a fully included class or in an included class until about 1.5 years into it. And by then I think I was a pretty angry parent. And like Liz said, how I advocate now and how I did then, it's taken training, and it's taken support, and it's taken a lot of reflection and being able to be more effective. But one of the persons was asking about, one of the things I didn't know is that if they gave me a time for my IEP that was at 8:30 in the morning, and I had 2 other small children that I had to take to school, I didn't have to show up at an IEP at 8:30 in the morning and say, my kids go to school, can I be there at 9 or 9:30 after I drop my kids off? If they were discussing 5 or 6 reports and it was going to, if they wanted to limit it to 1 hour, I could say, no, it's going to take 2 meetings to discuss these and questions. So I know that one of the parents, Sandra, was talking about that. And if your child or yourself, you're not giving the appropriate time to gather your team together, if the person you know that was so important to support you at that meeting can't make it, you have a right to say, those 2 dates are not going to work out. These are 3 other or 4 other dates that can we make it work? You have that opportunity, and that's part of your right to be able to talk to the coordinator who sets up the meeting to give you an appropriate time for you to be able to participate effectively in your child's meeting.
Anna, I would like to also include that, you know, a lot of this is rules and laws and regulation, and a lot of it is common sense. Oftentimes our parent gut is telling us the right thing. Yeah. The law states that the meetings must be held at a mutually agreeable time and place. Mutually agreeable means that it must work for both sides. And so in order for you to be an equal member of this team, and remember this is a team, the IEP or Individualized Education Plan meeting is a team meeting which you are a part of. And so it needs to work for both sides. You need to be respectful of their time. They need to be respectful of your time in order to have a good team meeting.
So I think we're going into our other slide. So I'm going to have Sandy go over. Thank you, Sandy. So we're going to go into the slide of preparing for the Individualized Education Program meeting. And we've gone over some of this, but even though we think people know it, sometimes we have to be redundant because we really want you to own it. We really want you to know that you have the right to invite people to come with you, especially because when you talk about your child, it's extremely emotional. And sometimes that person can tell you, you can tell that person ahead of time, if you see my chin shaking and I'm very upset, can you ask if we could take 2 minutes and walk out? And that will be discussed ahead of time so that person can help walk you through or help you compose yourself, come back in and be able to be more logical. It's very difficult to, when you're emotional, to put out information logically. Talking points or agenda. It's again, this helps you prepare the team to know that yourself and the team to know what your concerns are. If you do not write it down, it didn't happen and you didn't say it. It's so important for you to give information in writing. request a meeting in writing, request assessments in writing, request concerns to be talked about in the IEP, put them in writing so they're included in your IEP document, because they do not have to capture everything that was talked about. And you can walk away thinking, I said that, I discussed that, and it wasn't written in the narrative, and it wasn't written into the IEP document. Well, this way, if you have your talking points already, even if it's 4 or 5 different items, if they were included, the IEP is part of, it tracks it. It's memorialized in the IEP as being discussed. That's what's so important about your talking points. It's really important to have a folder and information. And in front of the folder, put a picture of your child. That way the team knows who they're talking about. Because many of these members, without, obviously, the people who have assessed them have met them, but if they're district coordinators, administrators, they might never have met your child. So it's important for them to see who we're talking about. Information you want to share. For my son, I can tell you that he loves music. Andy loved music since he was very young. He learned how to read music at 4 before he learned how to speak and before he learned how to read. So even though Andy didn't speak and read and really pay attention to a book or and was attentive all the time, if you played a song, he would be able to memorize it. So we were able to teach him multiplication and math facts through GG Math, which is a music program. So he learned his math facts because he loved music, and that was a way to capture his interest. Sometimes that is information you want to share with a team, because had I not shared that, we would have not had the avenue to reach him quicker, and to be able to grasp his interest sooner. I think that as part of the IEP team and being the parent of the child that's being discussed, you are the host of that meeting. So if you're expecting people to be at a 2 to 3 or 4 hour, it's really good practice to bring water and maybe some light snacks, some granola, because that is a gesture of breaking bread. It is really a gesture of coming together for your child and being able to form a community for him. It takes a village, and it takes sometimes 2 or 3 villages to raise our children. And hopefully this is a good team. You will be with them for the next 12 years. So it's really important for you to, be mindful that some of the, Ereida was talking about this yesterday, some of these teachers are probably working through their lunch. They only have a half-hour lunch. So if you bring a granola bar or water or, yogurts for breakfast, it's really very considerate just to be able to break the ice and to break bread with the team. Dress professional, casual. I think I used to work with somebody many years ago, and she used to say, a little paint will make you what you ain't. If you put a little bit of makeup on, it'll make you feel better. If you dress, you do not have to wear a suit. If you dress as you were going to a meeting, it makes you feel better. It really gives you that empowerment to feel confident and to be able to be at that table and own your opinion, and that way it also shows that you cared enough to be able to the team, that you cared enough to be at that meeting. I sometimes say that with reservation, because I know that some of our moms sometimes are going through a lot of stress and a lot of depression. Do not be late just because you had to do your hair and makeup. So just know that, you know, obviously you're going to make your best attempt to prepare and dress nicely and put on a clean shirt or whatever, but you do not have to put yourself together like if you were going out to a party. So the most important part is that you get there and you get there on time. Organize your notebook with your documents. This is something that I always help parents with. It's really important to organize your notebook because that way when things come up, you can find them quicker. If you take a stack of reports in a manila envelope, it's going to be really difficult to go through them at the last minute or in the IEP, and they're just flying all over the desk. If you have them organized already in a notebook and tabbed, it really helps you get to those areas and the notes that you want to get into easier. And this is something where the Family Resource Center, we either do it through Iep Clinics or through workshops. We would be happy to help you organize. Go over documents, evaluations, make copies, highlight points of interest. It's really important that you go prepared. It also shows the team that you are making your input, you are giving input because you actually have gone over this information and you really have taken the time. If you don't understand some of these documents or evaluations, please reach out to us because we will help you go through them. And when we were a drop-in center, right now because of COVID, we are not a drop-in center, but we even make copies for you. We will support you to get through this portion of preparation for your meetings. Bring something to write with and take notes. To me, this also goes with somebody else that comes with you, because you can. It's really important for you to come in prepared to take notes and write down questions you might have. But also the person sitting with you should also take notes. And there are a second pair of ears. Sometimes you might have missed something. Sometimes it's important to stop for a moment and say, did I need to research a terminology or a strategy or a service that's being talked about that I really don't know, or a diagnosis. For instance, sometimes they'll say, oh, your child has a phonological disorder. Well, what does that mean? That's a very difficult term to understand for a lot of parents. Well, that also can mean dyslexia, but for most of us, we wouldn't know that. And so it's really important to write down notes so you can go back later and look them up and get information from others that can give you input in finding out what some of these terms are. Bring an open mind and listening ears, like all of us had talked about earlier. Sometimes, and I happen to have gone through this last week. Somebody was saying, well, your child is sometimes says, what? He's constantly asking, well, can you say that again? I didn't get that. What? And so the mom said, my son doesn't really do that often. And I really should have been told that he did that often. And then she tells me, am I being too defensive? And I said, no, the RSP teacher really wants him to understand. And she actually thought that was a great strength because he was able to communicate that he didn't understand something, and he was able to have somebody repeat the instructions. But the parent was really upset about it at the beginning. She says, oh, I was just being defensive. And so it's really important to bring that support, because they can sometimes bring that information back to you in a different way, that you're receiving it in the way it was intended. So having an open mind sometimes to address behaviors maybe in a different way, or accept therapies, or sometimes the input that's being given to you. When Liz actually talked about this a lot, having an open mind. Sometimes we are so caught up in that battle that we are not really focusing on the big picture, and we are hyper focused on small things that really irked us about an incident that might have happened, but we're not really looking at the goal that's being presented because we're still thinking about an incident that happened, 2 months ago or a month ago that wasn't addressed correctly. So being able to clean the slate and coming in with an open mind and listening ears for that IEP is really important. Is there anything else, Liz, that you'd like to focus on?
There's a couple of things. I think you did an awesome job of being very thorough. What I would like to remind our audience about is that there will be 3 more trainings where they're going to be much more focused on laws, regulations, as they pertain to the Individualized Education Plan or the IEP meeting, and that this is really preparing parents from a parent's perspective. But one thing I did want to talk about quickly, going over documents and evaluations. You'll be hearing more about this over the next couple of meetings, but I wanted to share with folks that as the school district is evaluating and assessing your children for that individualized education meeting, the IEP meeting, 5 days prior to the meeting, Anna, you can correct me, it's either 4 or 5 days prior, you have the right to have copies of those assessments and evaluations. And what this does is that it creates, again, that ability for you to be a fully involved team member. You are providing the district with assessments and evaluations from the regional center and from doctors, and you need them to provide you with any information that they might come up with via assessments and evaluations with enough time that you can go over them and point out things that you may agree with or may not agree with, and so that you're all on the same page. Back in the day when my oldest was little, and I think it still happens in some school districts, the very first IEP, transition IEP, would consist of each person who evaluated the child reading word for word at that IEP meeting their findings. And that is just not a good place to be, because you're hearing for the first time how somebody else sees your child, and you're hearing it in real time. It is so much better that prior to the IEP, you get those written documents. Does 2 things. Number 1, you can go through and make changes, or you can make comments in areas that you think might not really fit your child. But number 2, if you're hearing that, it's taking up a lot of the actual meeting time. So the most efficient and respectful way is to ask for those evaluations ahead of time, and you have that right to do it. That's really the only thing I would add to this, Anna.
Perfect.
Anna, I would like to add for the last bullet, bring open mind and listening ears, that when they're recommending certain placements, to visit them and have an open mind about, seeing if it's a fit for your child, because we often have families that come into the center, and because they've heard other families talk negatively about them or say that program didn't work for my child or that program really worked for my child, it doesn't mean anything, because what works for one child may not work for the other. So visit those recommendations with an open mind, look at the positives, that those programs have to offer, and then consider what, may not work, but visit them with an open mind and an open heart.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to do 1 or 2 more slides, and then we're going to take questions and answers, and we'll try to be efficient with our time too in terms of going over them. I want to tell you a little bit about how the Family Resource Center at Westside Regional Center can support you. As most systems, we've morphed into something completely different than we were at the very beginning. At the very beginning, we were only able to serve families with children birth through 3. Our executive director at the time, Mike Danaker, actually said, you know what are you going to do if somebody calls you with a 6-year-old kid? You got to help them. Well, that turned into a 12-year-old kid, and then an 18-year-old teenager, and now we serve throughout the life cycle. So please don't ever hesitate to call with any question. If we don't have the answer, we'll help you research it. We also provide parent-to-parent support, which is what we hope we've been doing with this webinar, is showing you that you're not alone. Others have walked that path, and others will come after you on this very same path. We are a group that you never have to apologize to. You don't have to say, I wish I'd had time to do my makeup. I'm sorry I seem frazzled. We have been there and done that. So we offer that parent-to-parent support. We want very much to be your guide on the side, no matter what system you're navigating. If it's insurance or Medi-Cal, if it's California Children's Services or the Regional Center. We are a family resource center that is located within a regional center. That does a couple of things. It provides incredible partnership abilities. We can, if there's an issue with a family and getting an information to a service coordinator or asking about funding or different programs, we actually can walk. We were able to and will be able to again, hopefully soon, from our office into somebody else's office and say, hey, Mrs. Smith called and she's concerned about this. And so that really cuts down on the time. Having that partnership with our regional center has been so positive for us. Again, with information, if you're asking questions and you come in, there are many times as parents, we don't know what we don't know. You might call us or come into our center and think that you're coming in for one thing and leave with 5 others that you never even knew about. Our job is to have you just kind of talking. We call it peeling the onion. You talk about what's going on, and then we can target those things. Maybe you wanted lessons on accessible pools, but at the bottom line, you really want more friendship opportunities for your child. Let's figure all that out. Information on the different resources that are available to you, both what we call generic, meaning they're public resources that are out there, YMCAs, parks and recreation, different opportunities in the community that sometimes as parents of children with special needs, we don't think our children can access, but they can. So we can provide that. If there are referrals, if you're being challenged financially, let us help you refer to CalFresh, to different agencies that can provide financial support, getting you through this particular hard time and other things to come in the future. We provide you with our Family Empowerment Center grant. Ereida talked a bit about that. That grant allowed us not only to serve children who are served through Westside Regional Center, but children who qualify for special education supports and services who don't qualify for regional center services. Oftentimes, we'll have a child who qualifies for regional center services, and while the parent is coming and getting information, they'll mention that the child who really is difficult is the one with ADD or ADHD. And we'll say, hey, how can we help? Because we can help that child as well. We have a number of extraordinary support groups. I can't list them all now. There's, I believe, 10, or there's 8 currently. Many of them we have taken on to Zoom. They're phenomenal, and you can learn about them through the Westside Regional Center website. Anna talked a bit about the Iep Clinics that she does, that one-on-one preparation. Sometimes it's 3-to-1, depending on how many needs there are. But these are just some of the ways we can support you. Please, don't ever feel like that you're alone. I don't ever want to feel like you're alone if you've never called us. So can we have the next slide? And here's all of our contact information. That you've met me and Anna and Ereida. We have 2 more extraordinary staff members, Naima Guerrero, who also facilitates our sibling support group. It is a SIB shop sibling support group. It's awesome. And Martha Montealegre, who also is facilitating our Siempre Amigas support group. That is also extraordinary. Martha's been with our center for a long time, wealth of information and more compassion than I can even talk about. Fabulous. And then I believe the next slide might be resources. These are a few resources that you can go through. We tried to include ones that also talked a little bit about, acronym, or as Anna calls, alphabet soup. We want you to know what FAPE is. You'll be hearing that a lot over the coming trainings and workshops. FAPE, free and appropriate public education. Those are ones that people utilize a lot, and if you're not familiar with it, you don't know what the heck they're talking about. So I don't want you to get totally immersed. Just kind of go through these as people are mentioning them in meetings. Please know that you can always, and it's your right and your responsibility to say, wait a sec, I don't know. My least favorite one, my own individual least favorite special education acronym is PLOP, P-L-O-P. That stands for present level of performance. But somehow when people are talking about it, it just irritates the heck out of me. So know that there are a ton of special ed acronyms, and you can learn all about them and have them at your ready, or have people explain what they are. We also included different organizations. I believe Club 21 is on there. I love Club 21. It is geared toward children and families with Down syndrome. It's fabulous and great. And there are other ones that support learning how to access and navigate systems of care. They're all wonderful, that have been beneficial to many of us in our center. And so if there are any other questions.
So I just wanted to mention, Liz, that the Club 21 and other resources are embedded within the second bullet, the link on the second bullet.
Okay, perfect.
So that one has a lot of resources in it. These are all links that will take you to the resources, and we encourage you to visit them. The other thing we wanted to ask, if anyone calling through their phone has any questions for us as well.
I actually wanted to mention the support groups. Tonight we have a nationally known speaker. His name is Alan Brown. He will be speaking at the Children and Adults with Attention Deficit and Hyperactivity Disorder, CHAD, the West LA CHAD. And that is an amazing group. They will be on today at 7. That is one of our support groups. Also, this Thursday, we will also have our African American Black family support groups. And you can find that information through our social media, whether it's our page, our Facebook page, or the Regional Center bulletin.
I'd like to also add that our social media presence is right now much more efficient than our Family Resource Center webpage, which is kind of under construction. I would encourage all to go to westsidrc.org. the Westside Regional Center page where all of our information is also included. While we're finishing up, I'd like to ask all of you who took the pre-test if you could complete the post-test for our funders. Very much appreciated. And I wanted to also take the opportunity to thank not only our two interpreters who are so appreciated, so gifted, and we're so thankful to you both. So Sonia and Tony?
Great.
And while I'm thanking them, I'm sorry, Jasmine, I'm so sorry. While I'm thanking them, I would also like to thank our technical team who are due tremendous gratitude. And that's August Spazier, Rhiannon Maycumber, and Sandy Kabanatan. And I'd like to thank them very much from all of us. We could not have done this without them, and we'll be counting on them as we do our future trainings and webinars as well.
So if Rhiannon, do people need more time for the post-test?
Yes, we have about 50% of people who've completed it.
So there's one more question. Since the Empowerment Center is closed, how can we use the resources? Will there be a copy of this meeting? I might have missed a few key points. Did you want to answer that, Liz?
So technically, since how can we use the resources? Well, number one, this meeting is being recorded, will be posted, and will be accessible from the Westside Regional Center website. And the Empowerment Center is physically closed right now, but all of the staff are available via telephone, and our contacts are listed on one of the pages. You can always call the center number, 310-258-4063, and you'll get through to one of us. You will have a live person on there. There's also another question. Clara asked, can a transition meeting be set 3 months before a child turns 3? When would the appropriate time, because a child can grow within those 3 months? There are a couple of stages, and every district does this a little differently. We like to have a transition meeting of a getting to know you, maybe at 2 years, 6 months, and that's nothing more than, you know, this child will be referred to the home school district. Nothing is really done, just getting to know that child. Over the next 6 months, which is 2, 6 to 3, you're really thinking about how to prepare for that initial individualized education plan. At 2 years, 9 months, you should be receiving notice from the receiving district on any assessments or evaluations that are planned. At the same time, you can be requesting that specific evaluations and assessments happen through the school district. Anna talked a little bit about that, and you'll hear more about those things as you attend the next meetings in this 4-part series. That's a great question, Clara, and you're absolutely right. Children at this age change phenomenally in 3 months. And Martha, yes, the upcoming webinars will be posted. And if you can't make the scheduled webinars, you'll be able to access them on the Westside Regional Center site. Oh, what can we as providers of early start services do to best help our learners transition? I think you pronounce your name Keontae. I hope that I'm saying it correctly. I thank you from the bottom of my heart for asking this question. It really shows the level of awesomeness that are in our providers, how can you help them transition? Number one, keep that brief bit of awesome information that you have on that child that you can provide to the parent so they can share it at the meeting. Talk about what you know about this child as a learner, and how they best learn and how they best react and how they best grow. Please don't be shy sharing that with the receiving school district. And let the parents know that the parent is going to survive this transition and to really focus on the positive, and it's going to be a good thing. But really have that information accessible to the family so that they can share it with the receiving school district. Are there any other questions?
I was just going to say, hi, this is Rhiannon. I was just going to say, for the individual that wasn't able to complete the post test, we have your email, so I will send it to you directly. I'm not sure why you're not able to scroll down through it, so sorry about that, but we will send it to you via email.
Kiki has asked if transition dates will be extended due to COVID-19. Kiki and all in the audience, at this point, what we know, and this could change tomorrow afternoon or next week, there has been some relaxation on timelines from the federal government as it pertains to evaluations and assessments. But the vast majority of regulations and laws have not changed at all. So how that extends to you in this time is, let's say that you're able to do the evaluations and assessments. There's agreement on everything. Let's say you have the IEP meeting via Zoom, and clearly the only thing that can't be decided is how those services are going to be delivered and where they're going to take place. What the classroom might look like, if they're going to be done via telehealth, how those goals and objectives are going to be met, and what that placement looks like. I think, so in that regard, it's really hard to agree to a placement if a placement doesn't currently exist. Mm-hmm. And that is an understanding. And so that's why much of what is changing so rapidly. That's my long way of saying I don't have the exact answer to you. My gut is telling me yes, transition dates will be extended. If you're asking, will services continue through the regional center? If your child is exiting early start, we don't have good information on that right now in terms of your child will be exiting early start. If your child turns 3 May 8th, services will probably continue to the end of May, and then they will be exited. The most I can tell you right now is that we are doing everything in our power to get all of the information together to provide you with the best, most up-to-date information.
If I can just add that if you have questions about your transition or dates and all that stuff, our upcoming webinar on Thursday, we do have the Director of Early Start in Children's Services who will be speaking about COVID-19 and the effects on the early start transition process. So if you sign up for the webinar that's going on Thursday, you will get to ask those same questions to the Director of Early Start in Children's Services, as well as the Early Start program managers who may have more information about that particular topic or area. Any more questions from the phone line or on our Q&A chat? You can ask now.
So as we're ending this, I want everybody to know, if you are local to Westside Regional Center, obviously, you can always contact us. We also have the FRNCA, Family Resource Center Network of California, and you can go on their website and you can type in your zip code and it will take you to the closest family resource center that can support you. There are just many of us throughout the state. I want to say there's 47. I could be wrong on that, but I believe that's what it is. Many of us are family empowerment centers, not as many as we would like, but many are. And or you can call us and ask us for referrals to family resource centers in your neighborhood. And we wish you all tremendous success. I really encourage you to be a part of the upcoming webinars, the rest of them in this series. It's going to help set your mind at ease. And again, you're going to be hearing a lot of what you heard today, but that's a good thing. And I wish you all tremendous success and peace on your journey, and let us know how we can help. Ereida and Anna, did you have anything to say?
Don't hesitate to reach out to us. Thank you so much for attending.
Thank you for joining us and for welcoming us into your home. And I really encourage you to just grab as much information as you can as your kids are growing up. That's probably something I would add that I would have done differently when my kids were smaller. Just absorb as much information. Don't stress over not knowing too much, but try your best, and then get to know other parents. Go to parent support groups and visit the Family Resource Center.
Yes.
I did that when my son was older. I wish I would have done that when he was young. So thank you. Best of luck.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you, everyone. That's going to conclude our webinar series.
Thank you, ladies. Goodbye.